I'd like to call to order. I would like to call the February 2nd, 2017 meeting of the Board of Adjustments to order. First order of business, adoption of minutes. Do I hear a motion for change or adoption of the December 12th minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second's been made. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So adopted. Second order of business, variance factors. Read the
Do you have the variance factors?
No matter how well intended and no matter how carefully zoning ordinances are prepared, there are many instances in which the real application of the zoning ordinance creates an unusual problem for the landowner, and it is our responsibility to try to deal with these unique hardships that are created. The Board of Adjustment is given limited discretion in deciding whether to grant a variance. Under the North Carolina state law, this board is required to reach three conclusions before their issuance of a variance. They are, number one, they are particular differences or unnecessary hardships in carrying out the strict letter of the ordinance, such as the property owner can secure no reasonable return to make no reasonable use of the property. Since hardships must result from unique circumstances related to the applicant's land and the hardship, it is not required for the applicant's own actions. This, in issuing the variance, number two, it is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of these ordinances and preserves its spirit. Number three, that an issuance, the variance, it secure the public safety and welfare and does not subject justice to the community as a whole. Anyone wishing to speak, please proceed to the podium, to the including staff, to be sworn in. State your name.
Howard Morgan. Ryan Morgan. Old Liberty, West Cochran.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Knowing this, you wish to proceed, Mr. Morgan, to any other All-State representatives? Continue then. I will now ask Mr. Cochran to further explain the variance request we will hear this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask all the members to go to the explanation portion of the variance. For the variance, it's actually after the copy of the variance application. And if you can just kind of follow along with me there. All right. The Allstate office at 901 South Sterling Street has requested to replace the sign faces in its existing freestanding sign. In this case, the sign consists of both a top and a bottom portion. Let me get to that. Kind of flip this over here for you. As you can see, this portion, this is what we consider the sign face. If you'll follow me on the monitor here, this is what I'm going around right now, is the proposed new sign. that is being proposed by Allstate. The one here to the right, the smaller one, is how it currently exists. And let me give you a location here. I kind of got ahead of myself. This is the location of what we're talking about. Let me flip the view back up. I think everybody pretty much knows this configuration right here. We have South Sterling Street, and this is where we have South College Street coming into South Sterling Street. Roses is back over in this area. Perry Street comes down and actually comes through the parking lot here. The reason for this configuration is when they widened South Sterling Street some number of years ago, this actually got cut off, and then through some way has actually gotten kind of reinstated as coming back into South Sterling Street again. So just kind of want to give you a little bit of background. So once again, there's our configuration of how it, once again, they're proposed, and I'm sorry about the sideways here, and the existing. Okay. Okay, and back to the explanation. If you want to, I'm going to give you, the sign ordinance states that the replacement of the sign face requires one of two things to occur in order to achieve full compliance. Option one allows a business to keep the existing sign structure, that is the pole, the outlined sign casing and everything like that, if you follow this option one. And just want to kind of let y'all know that you can follow me along on the next couple of pages here. I've outlined each one of the options in detail when I refer to 4.4 so and so and so and so. I've actually got them detailed out here, so you can just kind of follow along in your packet if you would, please. So under option one here, option one allows a business to keep the existing sign as it is and replace the face only. Remember the portion we're going back to that is just the face, not the actual structure or the pole or anything of that nature. This can be found in the non-conforming section of the sign ordinance 6.6.2b and is predicated on the installation of additional landscaping in compliance with section 4.4.4.2 of the landscaping, street yard landscaping, that must be installed in the area of the business location closest to the street, in this case Sterling Street. Upon examination, installation of existing landscaping would prove difficult, if not impossible, to achieve for full compliance. That is the 10-foot wide compliance. If you'll notice, I'll kind of go over here and go through the little bit of the detail here. This is the area outlined in yellow is what the actual requirement for what we're talking about would be. It's under what's called the CO performance standard. And so you can see that it would have to be 10 feet wide is what the normal size of this is. Fence or wall, you can actually do that, and you can reduce the number of shrubs by 25%. But it talks about large trees, then goes small trees, large shrubs, medium or small shrubs, so on and so forth like that. And of course you can, if you have anything less than, this is predicated on, per 100 feet, of course. So any portion of that, say if you had 66 feet, you'd only have to do, like, say, 2 small trees, so on and so forth like that. So, but this kind of gets at exactly what the requirements are under the 4.4.4.2 in order to keep and just replace your sign face once again. Okay, and upon examination, as I stated, the installation of this landscaping would prove difficult. Okay, it appears that they have only approximately 3 to 4 feet associated with the property, with the rest of it being right-of-way, which cannot be used to satisfy this requirement. So, and I just kind of want to detail this out a little bit more here. And I did not include, I don't think, a really good one, really good photograph of this. But in looking, if you go along the landscaped island that you have here, the property line pretty much splits this landscaped island that is in the front here, and it's about half right-of-way and half belongs to this actual property. So even with the full compliance of that entire landscaping width, I think we had that being right at about 10 feet, but there's only about, it looks to be only about 4 feet, more or less, we didn't do a survey or anything like that, that goes along with this property, and the rest of it being right-of-way. That's just what we, in just an examination of what we could find out through the GIS. Widening the landscaped area, so if you were trying to move it back into their property, would require that the travel lane that is used to access the actual parking places would actually have to be reduced in size. So that is not really gonna be acceptable because that's gonna make the travel lane so narrow that would become dangerous. You wouldn't actually be able to actually access into the parking places, and if someone was parked there, there's a potential for, being backed into because you didn't have enough width for sight distance and things of that nature. So that's not a really good option. Option two would be bringing the sign into compliance with sections 5.4.3.1 and 5.4.3.2 of the sign ordinance. And in this case, it would require changing the sign to an arm-type sign, lowering the sign to 10 feet, installing rock or stone at the base, and installing 50 square feet of landscaping area. Now, let me kind of go over, and once again, I have that a little bit detailed out here. Option 2 compliance. So, and the one thing I did not talk about here was that the arm type sign is one of the two types of sign for compliance. It could be done as an arm sign or a monument type sign here. So, the MID, as far as signs go, allows a 35 square foot sign. That's the base zoning for this area, is 35 square feet. A 10-foot high height, and you only get one sign per area unless you have up 10 plus tenants. You can have two. Okay. And then this is where it details the freestanding sign may be monument, arm, except that freestanding signs located within MID zones shall be monument or arm style only. So that's where you get that. And then it goes on down to talk about the freestanding signs in the corridor overlay shall incorporate bricks, stacked or mortared stone or similar material to the base, into the base or columns of the sign. And then we go into, I actually did a little bit more detailed, once again, turned it sideways here. Hope you'll bear with me just 1 second here. This is another shot of the existing sign as it is, with a pole, and it's a little bit better of the location. I also had just a couple of more here. This is an overall view of the area, and you can see a little bit better of where the poles are. Roughly from where the poles are forward would be right away, from the poles are back, that would be the property of Allstate here. So those are really the two options you have. Number one, you have the option to keep the sign and put in the additional available landscaping, or number two, come into compliance. And of course, y'all have the ability to make any kind of accommodations that you feel necessary for either one of the decisions that you come to here, or you have the ability to vary some of the requirements here. So I just wanted to use that as a springboard for y'all's potential discussion, but that's all I have, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can.
I don't think you have any.
Mr. Cochran, I just want to ask you one question. So option one is to keep the sign as is, but they would be required to do landscaping. Do I understand that correctly?
That is correct.
And your testimony was such that the ability to do landscaping is just not practical, given the size of the lot.
As an opinion, they could not fully meet what is required there. They could meet, put in part of the landscaping up the front if that's something that y'all wanted to explore and allow them to use it as is.
Maybe like some small bushes where it wouldn't interfere with the appearance of the sign, but yet give a different base look.
Well, you would have to, they would have to be in compliance with that 4.4.4.2, and use the landscaping out of there. It may require, say, one small tree, some taller shrubs, some medium shrubs and smaller shrubs. And of course, we would take into understanding that, we couldn't put anything that's gonna endanger any kind of, traffic or anything of that nature. Being able to see when you're coming out there. Which really shouldn't be a problem, because any turning that you're gonna be making out of there, this is going to be you're turning into traffic. So the landscaping, there really is not any area to the left where I don't think you could put any landscaping. So,
That's what I was concerned with. It'd have to be something small.
May I add a point of clarification?
Please.
Russ, can you go back to the, aerial?
did you want the one that's showing the actual aerial, or?
Yeah, this one.
Okay.
And that work. So what I wanted, and I don't have a way to point this out to you, but if you look along the edge of the property that runs along Sterling Street, and you look at the driveway entrance to this property, Everybody see
Off
where-
of Sterling?
off of Sterling, the driveway entrance to the property. On the very bottom, so Russ, if you'll put your cursor over where the sign is, okay, from that point headed north is the driveway entrance. And then from that point where his cursor is, right there at the edge where there's a little bit of a median there. Okay, so that's the only area, for the applicant to come into full compliance, they would have to go from the telephone poles, which is roughly where Russ has the cursor, and they would have to plant a street yard that would extend from that point 10 feet into the property. Now, near as I've seen, that's from the telephone poles to where the pavement starts is about 2 or 3 feet. So they would then have to excavate a portion of the pavement there to meet the full compliance. So I think what they are asking for is a variance to not have that requirement based on the site conditions. And so I thought it might be helpful to see kind of what they would be required to do. I don't think that the other option that Russ talked about would be to excavate about 50 square feet around the sign and put a landscape planting in there, which would interfere with the driveway of the property. So keeping whole the driveway entrance into the property, and installing the landscaping where they could would be on the other side of the driveway, and possibly if they had to install the full street yard width would be probably an additional 7 feet or so into the existing pavement. So they're asking to either not have that requirement, street yard requirement at all based on existing conditions, or to reduce it, I would imagine.
Is that property that you're speaking of where they might have to do that, isn't that right of way?
The right of way is right at the telephone poles, right at the back of the telephone poles from the maps that we have.
Perry Street is, the Perry Street that's recognized on the map is owned and maintained by the city.
The Perry Street that is recognized on the map terminates right where Russ's cursor is.
Okay.
That is a Google Maps image, the overlay that's showing there, and Perry Street does not continue. I think people use it as such, if those that would use it as such, but it actually terminates there, at that property line that runs perpendicular to Sterling Street.
Is there not a wall at that point now?
There was a wall. It appears that the wall has been removed and asphalt added to make it passable. But that is not a city street. That portion of it, that segment of it is not a city street. That was terminated when Sterling Street was widened and a curb installed.
But it's fair to say that our citizens use that access point to get at houses back in this area?
It could. There's not, I don't think there's many citizens that live back in there.
Well, I
And
noticed
there
a
are
house
other ways
up
to,
in the right-hand
There is a
corner.
house here.
yeah, there are other ways to access it, through the street just to the south that, provides a better access. So my guess is that's where most of the access is, on the other side of the church.
Yes, sir.
I don't think, and the applicants, obviously are out there every day. That's where they work, and they may be able to attest better to the amount of traffic on that street. But if folks are using that, then they're using it and crossing private property to access Perry Street from Sterling Street.
I see. Thank you.
The only alternative I can see to what we're talking about is to bring the side street straight into the South Sterling and then let them use where the cut-through is on a parking lot.
Well, that was.
And that would be an undue hardship, I believe, wouldn't it?
Well, you continued, Perry Street being continued through would be an action of DOT, and DOT actually took action to terminate that street.
Right.
Into Sterling, or to terminate Perry Street into Sterling. So I don't think that would, that continuity would happen there.
That's what I'm saying, that's, to go into full compliance, that would have to be done.
That would certainly help that to be done, yes.
Which would be an undue hardship
Because
on
you
the
would-
city and on him.
Right, because what would happen is they would have to, like you're saying, they would have to excavate into that area, which is where people are currently traveling. The other part of it would be is that it would reduce the amount of pavement that a patron of that business would have to be able to negotiate turning around and all of that in there. So you're reducing your parking lot area to making it more difficult for folks to get out.
Would that change, would that be non-compliance for having parking for a business?
No, I think they have ample parking currently. What it would potentially do is reduce the travel lane width to a substandard travel lane width. And, at a very minimum, it would make it, much more difficult to access. The only benefit that it would have would be terminating that and putting up some sort of barrier there would add the ability to have a couple more parking spaces, if you park straight into that. But we didn't look at it as far as how practical that would be, as far as somebody parking there, how they would back out and all that. You'd have to have a rearrangement of the parking, striping in there.
It's,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just looking.
Thank you for taking time tonight to help us out on this. That street, I don't know if you've ever been to that office and had to turn in there to get in and out. It's very difficult, dangerous. If you're coming from College Street, which is the way I go all the time from my other office, you can't turn left there. So all the customers, and I've been in business 35 years, so a lot of those customers come to my office on Berkmont, makes it easier to get in and out of, because they complain with how hard it is. So to turn left is impossible. You got to go up the street. So what most people do, they go up to the church, come around the back, come down that street, and come in. When you leave there, it's the safest way to leave, is go out that street, come around, and come out to church, turn left, and go back toward town. Traffic backs up there, it makes it difficult to turn right to come into town at times. It can be done, you have to wait, but that side street is a benefit that business, and there are several houses up there that use it. It's, during the day, not a whole lot of use, but at night, they use it quite a bit for some reason, but anyway, and I agree with, Mr. Lookadoo that it would be very difficult to turn around. When you pull in one of those spaces, if its parking lot's full, you gotta wiggle to turn right to come back out on the Sterling Street. So if you back out of those spaces and you go up that street and go around, it's a lot safer. Takes a little longer, but it is safer, using that street. So simply, you know, I wish we could comply with the ordinance. We just don't have the room. It would take up, make it dangerous to get in and out to put a flower bed there around the sign. I agree, that's not an option, but basically, you know, all we can do is replace those panels, is what we wish to do. That other sign, to make sure you understand, we're not changing the size of the sign. That the existing sign on that picture is just a downsize of the sign. They are the same size. We're just changing panels is what we're doing.
I have two questions. To your knowledge, has anyone ever come off the road and hit that sign?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Number two, is it a two-sided sign? Okay.
Yeah, we'll be placing lower panels on both sides and upper panels on both sides.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How long have you been in business at that location?
We just purchased this location January 1.
Okay.
Actually, we didn't buy the location. We bought a book of business. The owner still owns the business, the property. We're leasing the property there. We don't, our plan is in a couple of years is to move. I hate to put a lot of money in a sign, and because of the location, we're probably gonna look at moving it later. But for the current customers there, you know, we want to try to stay there and make it an easier transition. The current owner that we purchased the book from is still there and works with us. But we just started January 1.
For my benefit, prior to your purchase of that, was that an insurance company?
It is.
Going
It's an
concern?
Allstate office.
Allstate office, and you just bought the book of business there.
That's correct. Well, I own the Allstate office across from the college.
But just again, for clarity, prior to January, it was a insurance business, and people were coming in and out of there getting and purchasing and procuring insurance.
That's correct. Hope Thomas owned the agency, and her dad owned it prior to that, and her brother owned it, and then now she currently owns it.
And the sign we're talking about tonight was in existence at that time as well.
Yeah, it's been there long. How long? 10? 20? Yeah, it's been there a long time. I don't know exactly the date, you know, but.
So the sign itself would be grandfathered in, but the change is what you're asking for.
All we're asking is changing panels in the current sign.
That's what I'm saying, though,
Yeah.
but the sign itself, the location of the sign is grandfathered.
Yes.
So all you're asking is to change the front and back of the sign.
Take the panels out of that, you take the ends of it off, slide out a panel, put in a new panel.
Is this sign illuminated
Yes,
at night?
currently is.
And it will be done the same way?
Same way, nothing changes, electrical don't change, just slide out an acrylic panel, slide another one in.
And both signs is the same size. I mean, you're not changing nothing on the size. You're just
No.
gonna use that existing sign.
Correct. The same border, the metal, nothing, I know it looks, when you look at that picture of the drawing, it looks like it's a clean sign, but it's just, you know, it's a more updated sign, and Allstate requires their, current logo. Anytime you change a sign, they wanna put that Good Hands logo on all their signs now, so we have to change the complete, both panels.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would just say that this is one of those circumstances, I think, where the ordinance simply can't be complied with based on the long-standing history of it being there for 20 years. It's the same sign. If they do change that out, they're going to lose the the value of the grandfathering, of course, and, I think, you know, on behalf of our citizens, this is one of those situations where I'm of a view that we ought to grant them a variance from the ordinance and, in light of what they're projecting to do.
And also, the sign, I think, would improve the appearance of the whole area there, because the one that is there now is not as eye-pleasing. And the one you intend to put in is more pleasing. When coming down the street and you're looking up into Morgan, you've got a nice sign there. Anything?
I'm good with it.
I concur with his statement, you know, it's, if they could comply to it, that they would, there's no room there to do it with, and so I totally concur with what he made.
What's the expression, between a rock and a hard place?
Yeah, I don't see no problem with it.
If discussion is concluded, I would like to remind members that they need to base any decision as a whole on the three statements regarding how this variance meets the three requirements referred to earlier in the meeting. So when you make a motion, please include how you feel about it and meeting these requirements. Do I hear a motion based on this?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion, and my motion is that a variance be granted to the owners of the Allstate property because, in my view, there is a practical difficulty and indeed an unnecessary hardship in carrying out the strict letter of the ordinance, such that the property owner can secure no reasonable return or make no reasonable use of his property. Such hardship is, in fact, the result from unique circumstances related to the applicant's land, based on the testimony we heard tonight, and the hardship is not the result of the applicant's own action, again, consistent with the testimony that we received tonight. And then secondly, that in issuing the variance, it is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance and preserves its spirit. And then thirdly, that in issuing this variance, it secures the public safety and welfare based on the testimony we received tonight about lighting and traffic and that sort of thing, and does substantial justice to the community as a whole on behalf of our citizens. That would be my motion.
I will second that.
Second thing.
We have a second. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any negative? No negative. After the finding statements have been answered, the chair reads, anyone aggravated by this decision of the board has 30 days to appeal the Supreme Court of Burke County. So the motion is granted. I declare the meeting adjourned.